let's first read the question. The question says that you are working as a project manager and you are in the implementation stage of your project. One of the major risks of your project got realized, which is going to affect the project objectives very badly. As a project manager, what should be your next step? And the option choices for this question is refer and update the issue log, refer and update the risk register, add the risk as the secondary risk in the risk register, and the last option says that change the risk owner. Okay. So here is the right answer to this question, which is refer and update the issue log. Now I am going to explain this question first, the important pieces of this question, and how to get to this answer. And where was the major confusion in this regard? I'm going to explain this as well. First of all, this is my way of like perceiving the question and connecting the question to the practical world as well as to the answer choices, which is finding the important and key terminologies or keywords in the question. So one very important key terminology in this question is major risk. The other is got realized, and one other which is going to help you connecting this question to the answer choices is very good. So we clearly know that this question is coming from the risk management domain. We also know that risks are of two types: the negative impacted risks and the positive impacted risk, right? So the negative impacted risks are termed as threats, and the positive impacted risks are termed as opportunities. So this risk is clearly a major risk, which means it's a critical risk, critical priority risk. Another thing is which is telling us that it has got realized, which means that this is something which already has happened, and the probability of this risk, the occurrence of this risk now is 100%. This risk already has occurred. And once it has occurred, the scenario is already telling that the impact of this risk is huge and bad. So the bad impact or the worst nature of the impact, if the impact can be on any constraint, it can be cost, it can be schedule, it can be resource, it can be any other area of the project, but that is not mentioned. But what is mentioned is the impact is bad, which clearly is telling that this is an issue. The risk which has a negative impact and it gets realized, it is termed as issue, right? Now, the question is asking, as a project manager, what should be your next step? So first, we need to answer ourselves, even without seeing the answer choices, we need to answer ourselves when a risk, which maybe it is identified or maybe it is not identified, it directly comes to you as an issue, which we term as unknown unknown. Whatever the case is, be it an identified risk or be it an unidentified risk, in both of the cases, if it has got realized, it is an issue, right? And what should be your next step when an issue comes to you? The next step, of course, is to log this issue in the issue log, is to record that, is to articulate that, so that whenever it is going to be discussed in your next status meeting or in your next meeting, depending on the urgency of the issue, because the next step after logging is going to be checking its impact and its impact on multiple constraints of the project and its urgency. And it clearly is saying that this is a critical risk. So most likely this issue is going to be prioritized for action steps and corrective action and workarounds as well, most likely. But that is not our call to take in this scenario. In this scenario, they are just asking that what is going to be your next step, which is this. Now let's talk about why B, C, D are not the answer. So for this question, the contest was between A and B. The C and D were already gone. Let me tell you why. First, let's talk about C and D, and then we will talk about B, that why B was not the answer and why A was the answer. So, first of all, C, add the risk as secondary risk in the risk register. So, what is a secondary risk? Before you are in a position to eliminate C, you need to be knowing what is a secondary risk. So, a secondary risk is a risk which comes in the project or which may come in the project, because it's a risk, so it may come in a project as a result of implementation of the response plan to any primary risk or any other identified risk. So whatever the response plan you have identified, it can be a preventive action, it can be a mitigation plan, it can be a corrective action, whatever response plan you are implementing, as a result of implementation of that risk, this another risk may occur, right? I can give you many examples, but just in the interest of time, let's not talk about it, because this is not a conversation over here that what is a secondary risk. So in this scenario, clearly there is no such talk that as a result of this major risk, any other risk has occurred. This is still talking about the primary risk. So C is definitely not the answer. Why D is not the answer? Change the risk owner. See, just because of the reason that risk has occurred and it has realized and it already had a negative impact, it doesn't really imply that all the fault belongs to the risk owner. Maybe the risk owner has done the due diligence, has done the necessary steps as per the response plan or as per the agreed upon strategy, but maybe it didn't work out, or maybe the scenarios were not in favor of the project team or the project overall, or there can be any situation which is not mentioned in the question or the scenario. So we cannot really assume that just because of the reason a risk has been identified, all the fault belongs to risk owner. And the other reason why D is not our choice, because risk already has occurred. So now the risk doesn't belong to the risk register. It doesn't belong to the risk owner anymore. Now it is going to belong to someone who is going to be the issue owner, right? So even if you are going to change the risk owner for this particular risk, maybe, I mean, this is something which is not going to be helpful. So this is not the choice. Now coming to the confusion part, update the risk register. So for your information, for this question, majority actually has selected B. Refer and update the risk register. I am not in disagreement of updating the risk register when our risk is it is realized, or it has occurred already. You go back to your risk register and you update the risk register with the important information, specifically the status, because now it is going to be deactivated from the risk register. It is not going to be deleted from the risk register, but it is going to be deactivated, and maybe with some comments or some reserve information, or maybe some information about how much the preventive action or the responsive strategy worked, with these comments. But my question over here is there anywhere in the question mentioned that this risk was already identified? They just are saying that one of the major risks of your project just got realized. Maybe it was identified, maybe it was not identified, maybe it directly came to you as an issue, or maybe it was identified and it was there in the risk register. Both cases are there, right? But as they have not mentioned that identified keyword, so we cannot really say that it was there in the risk register. But that is not the primary reason why B is not the answer. B is not the answer because once even an identified risk which is there in the risk register, it gets realized, the first thing that you need to do is to log it in the issue log with whatever data available about the issue. Then if it is a very urgent one, probably you need to work on it, like with for analysis, assessment, and whatever workaround needs to be done. And in parallel, you can just update the risk register with its status. But that is not the first thing, like updating the risk register is not the first thing or the next thing that you should be doing in case of a critical risk becoming an issue, right? So first of all, this is identified or not, it is not mentioned here. And even if that is mentioned, I would still say that A is going to be the first choice, rather B is going to be the first choice in this case. So that is the reason why B is not the answer over here. But okay, so that was the explanation. I hope you like the explanation. And if you like the explanation, please do let me know in the comment area. So I will see you soon in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye.